फाउंडेशन की ओर से आज शाम आर्ट मैटर्स की कौन सी 10वीं किस्त है, 11वीं किस्त में आप सबका स्वागत है। मुझे बताया गया है कि यहाँ आने के लिए हजारों लोग तैयार हैं, लेकिन उनको पुलिस ने कानून और व्यवस्था के कारण रोक दिया है। इसलिए आप लोग जो पुलिस से बचकर यहाँ आए हैं विशेष धन्यवाद के पात्र हैं। आप जानते ही हैं कि रज़ा फाउंडेशन सैयद हैदर रज़ा साहब ने, वो स्वयं आते लेकिन उनकी तबीयत ठीक नहीं है, वो ज़्यादातर कार्यक्रमों में आते रहे हैं। 10 वर्ष पहले स्थापित किया था उसका, इसके बहुत सारे काम हैं, उनमें से एक काम कि साहित्य और कला संबंधी कुछ मुद्दों पर खुली चर्चा हो। And it is with that intention that we started, in collaboration with the India International Center, this series called Art Matters. And as you can see, the Shlation Art Matters, there is a play on that Art matters, which most people don't think it does, and there are matters relating to art. And one of the things that we are trying to do is to bring some issues on the table which have been either bypassed or not discussed enough. And one such issue is the issue for this evening. That is, why arts stop talking to each other. Now, of course, one can always argue, no, they are talking quite merrily and quite happily and quite comfortably, quite in a domestic way or perhaps in a theatrical way, etc. But may I remind you that till the 19th century, in India, literature, theatre, visual arts, music and dance shared a lot of things. They shared beliefs and imagery, they shared narratives, they shared symbolism, imagery, etc. Comes the modern intervention and it creates a hiatus. So music and dance become classical and they go to the classical, and the others become modern. So theatre, visual arts and literature go on to the bandwagon of the modern. And this intervention of the modern creates a hiatus between these arts, barring, I think, a short period of IPTA, when people who were ideologically inspired came together, and there were musicians and dancers and theatre men and painters and writers who came together in Bombay. But that lasted for a short while. If you go to the West, many of the movements that you have known were shared by many arts. Impressionism was not just a movement in visual arts, it was also in music, it was also in theatre, it was also in poetry. Surrealism, more importantly, was again a movement which was shared by poetry, by theatre, by cinema, etc. So what has happened in our situation, whereas, again to remind you of this piece, of course you need not be reminded, but just for refreshing your memory, in Vishnu Dharmottar, the famous episode where a prince wants to create a sculpture and he goes to the guru and guru says, oh, you want to create a sculpture, then you must learn dance. He said, okay, I'll learn dance. He said, oh, you want to learn dance, you have to learn music. He said, okay, I'll learn music. He said, oh, you want to learn music, you'll have to learn poetry. So you have to learn every art in order to become a sculptor. This was a tradition which is well entrenched in this country. Now what has happened, which is not to say that the truth that is posited in each of the arts is quite distinct, autonomous and unique. I think the truth of poetry is quite different from truth of painting and sculpture. The truth of the visual arts is quite distinct and different from the truth of theatre. A truth of theatre is quite distinct and different from the truth of music, and truth of dance similarly. So there's nobody saying you should give up your autonomy or freedom or uniqueness. But there have been occasions, and in recent past also there have been occasions when these arts have come together and have done something very interesting once in a while. But that's far and few. There is no movement, no dialogue, critical or creative. I remember there was a production of a play by whom? No, it was produced by Kumar Shahani. It had a set design by Akbar Padamsi, and it was a play by the Pillai, what was the name? Shankar Pillai. Shankar Pillai. A play on Draupadi or something, which I saw in NCPA. There have been other experiments of that kind. There was Swaminathan designing in Bharat Bhavan the set design for Habib Tanvi's production of Midsummer Night's Dream. And there have been such attempts here and but largely, I don't think even if you go and see the Delhi scene, that you'll find some painters coming to, let's say, music recitals or to dance recitals, but you'll not find dancers, exception apart, going to a poetry reading or poets going to see a play and things of that kind. There is a distancing which has taken place, and there is no sense of camaraderie, no sense of sharing, and no sense of trying to be curious about what's happening. I mean, ask a musician, he'll give you any number of bandishes and will want you to accept them as poetry. Whereas there's great poetry available to be sung, but well, somehow they never thought that it was worth singing. They have never tried, so they have their own repertoire, and there are, I'm told, 10,000 odd bandishes and khayal and drupad both taken together, which completely ignore the rich poetry in Hindi itself, for instance, of the Bhakti Kavya or the Liti Kavya, etc. So these are the issues. Now, what are the issues? Issues are, quite simply, why have arts stopped talking to each other? Is there a way in which this dialogue, which unfortunately seemed to have ceased, could be restarted without damage or without prejudice to each art's own autonomous realm of meanings and insights and truths, which each art naturally, very jealously protects. So nobody is asking you, give up your territory. For God's sake, listen to the neighbor, talk to him once in a while, sit with him or her, and do something maybe together. So that's what's going to happen this evening. We have a very eminent jury, as the idiom goes. We have PRABODH PARIKH, who is a philosopher and a poet and has been very close to visual artists. He lives in Bombay and has taken up the trouble of coming here. Then we have JATIN Das, who is an unavoidable character in Delhi's cultural scene. Anytime he comes, he calls it good morning, whether it is late in the evening. I'm very surprised that he arrived in time, in fact, a little earlier than most of the other panelists. And Jatin Das has, apart from being a painter of repute, a collector of fans, and has created a cultural center in Bhubaneswar, has also been part of a short period when poets and painters in Bombay used to be together and used to dialogue with Arun Kolatkar and Deep Patel and people like that. Then we have PRERANA SHRIMALI, who's a Kathak dancer, perhaps one of the best in the country today. And she has interacted with some of the arts. And then we have another unavoidable character, our friend Sunil Kothari. I have not been able to avoid him for the past 50 years. There is not a place where you run into. Even if you go far off to Manipur, he might be there. No, you never know. So, but he has devoted a lifetime studying Indian classical dance and has written about it and has written books about it, and recently he seemed to have written a book on Satriya, the latest addition to the classical repertoire of dances, which seem to be ever expanding. Now we have 9 or 8 or what? 8. And so there they are. And I'll ask PRABODH, each one will be given about 12 minutes to make the point. All the points need not be made, as obvious, because 12 minutes is a short time. And once they have made all these points, each one of them, then there will be occasion for them to speak to each other if they like, and then it will be open to the house to make brief comments, ask questions, or do whatever. So let us start with the Bombayite, PRABODH PARIKH. You can speak from there if you like, or you can come here.
Sir.
I keep on forgetting to even flowers every time.
The lady. The eldest. To the grey hair. You are the youngest. Would you please switch off or do whatever?
Namaskar. There's things that I'm going to read out, but that's only a kind of make-believe. All talking and conversations, that is to say, vada vivading, vada vivad, or crossing over, crossing boundaries, transgressing boundaries, suggest a shared, non-fragmented, inherited space of discourse, generally speaking. Dialogues and conversations and talking and boundaries and then crossing boundaries happen almost entirely because we have inherited a shared and non-fragmentary space for discourse. That is to say, there is a life of community. That is to say that there is a form of life that we share, more or less, not identically. But there is a sense of hermeneutics, a circle in which we are nodding to one another. Even talking, which very much includes an attentive and non-bullying sense of listening. A simple talking. Just imagine a situation between those two who have lived together for 50 years, 20 years, 10 years under the same roof, coming from almost similar community, if not, my dal and your khichdi, kind of thing. There is a way by which we talk to one another, but only when there is listening. And that too which is attentive listening, not careless listening. And listening that is not overpowering the other, which is non-bullying. Only when these circumstances are present, talking happens, conversations happen, boundaries get defined and are shared. What I'm suggesting is that arts, That is to say, art practices. Because I'm going to play with the idea of, are poets not talking to other arts, or is poetry not talking to other arts? Are dancers not talking to other arts, or is dance not talking? We're going to play with that. Even those who are talking share, or we should assume that they share, alert and imaginative modes of awareness. Alert because, I'm sensitive to poets who have written before me, if I'm a poet. Either spontaneously, because, you're gifted, or, you're talented, or you're born in a world where parents have been talking poetry and uncles are passing by with, gali around. So you imbibe it. It's a sanskar, it's a disposition. Or cultivatingly. You can cultivate it, no problem. We'll take up this question when we discuss something like bowels, for example, where a bowl would say you cannot become one, you are born one. But that's also will take up. In other words, every talking, that is to say every conversation, if I were to use a modern contemporary jargon, involves non-intertextuality. We are always referring to something, which in turn is referring to something. And in that sense, we are talking. We are talking a specific art practice with awareness and alert and imaginative ways of remembering and recollecting and making connections and sharing it. Now, unless you do that, you're not going to do very well as a dancer or a poet or a writer or a musician or a painter. In other words, there is always a sense of an archaeology of a text. When I say archaeology, what I mean is there are layers, and you can dig further, and it's all right to never talk to anything else except the archaeology of the text. If you were committed to a specific art practice for various reasons of your own, it is totally all right to be entirely spending a whole lifetime in committing yourself to the archaeology of the text, which will open the whole of humanity for you anyway. A single text can do that because of what I've said earlier, a shared space which is non-fragmented. Now, I'm talking dreamingly, a non-fragmented shared space of a community. What do we, the contemporary citizens, individuals, know about it? That is where the talking has stopped. And something else has begun to happen, which is equally crucial. What kind of talking is this? We might use the word self-talking to self. Tukaram has a brilliant abhang about it. He says, as far as I'm concerned, I am the battleground and I am the enemy of myself. Bhagavad Gita also says that, luckily for us, you alone are the friend or the enemy of yourself. That is what I'm going to suggest at the end of this conversation, that perhaps that's where we are talking to ourselves. Okay, now what does that mean? Because when we're talking about art practices, what does it mean for a poet committed to writing that single poem for a whole lifetime? What kind of talking is he or she doing? I suppose some of us, and this is where I'm struggling to raise this question for myself, and I wouldn't speak on behalf of everyone when I'm saying this. I suppose some of us, either as disinherited children, I'm saying it with a sense of grief and melancholy, disinherited children, restlessly anxious, and therefore reaching out. Let me see what is Arthur doing there. And let me see why Ristan Zara goes into a restaurant and tears apart a poem, which is an archaeology of a text. He deconstructs it and puts it in his hat and tosses it around and says, this is the poem. What is going on? disinherited children, that is to say, those who are not at home in the world in which they are born, for some reason or the other. Restlessly anxious, and therefore opening up to all forms of imaginary conversation, imaginary homelands. And of course, adventurous, risk-taking. It's about taking risk with yourself. Crossing boundaries. And of course, they find themselves caught up in varied cultural landscapes. So on the one hand, we have those who practice different art practices because they are gifted or talented, or because they have inherited it, or because they have, a way of speaking to the world through their creative and critical activities. I'm suggesting this model is the model of non-fragmented shared life of community, in which arts of course talk to one another. I'll give enough examples of that. And there is another, not denying the first, but another paradigm, a mode of life in which only experience that we have is the experience of disruptions and fragmentation. And therefore, the restless inquiry takes you into all kinds of realms, including other art practices, which is another approach to reaching out to other arts. You're writing a poem, but you're looking at a painting. You're painting, but you're looking at cinema. You're seeing a film, but you're attending to a poem of Tarkovsky's father, rather than seeing a film. Unusual things are going on. You are experimenting with yourself. So I suppose some of us, either as disinherited children, restlessly, anxiously, adventurously crossing boundaries, finding ourselves caught up. It's not easy. In varied cultural landscapes, in particular, in times like ours. Now, of course, I want to historicize this. I hope these times gets over. With the hegemony of a single party ruling India, the times will be over. One voice, no other voices. Where fragmentations, in times like ours, where fragmentations, distractions and disruptions. Now, why does this happen? I don't want to psychologize the whole thing and, reflect on it extensively, but I have a small number of suggestions why it happens, again from personal experiences. The fragmentations, distractions and disruptions are ways of experiencing the way we are in the world today, for some of us, partly as a result of quote-unquote European experience. This is where politics enter deeply. Hegemony enters, Europe enters, the West enters, and colonization enters. Everything that you can talk about, no problem. Already it's entered into our lives. I'm talking to you not in Gujarati, not in Nadiyadi Gujarati or Bombay Gujarati Kalbadevi, but in a language which is quote-unquote the language of the colonized. So partly because of that, no problem. I grew up on Kafka and I don't have to apologize for it. I grew up on Rauschenberg and John Cage, no apologies. I have my Narsi Mehta anyway, hidden somewhere here. Partly because of the existential situation of being human. And partly because of the life of an individual in a city. That is to say, being a citizen. Nagarik, Nagara, being that. No problem. Let's handle it and let's see what happens. Now I'm saying something which I hope makes sense in terms of those conceptual categories for convenience that I imagined to be. Non-fragmented, inherited forms of life in which a community nods to one another and talks. And when that happens, of course arts talk to each other all the time. Look at all these examples I'll give you. Almost all the inherited forms of performances has the quality of arts talking to one another. No problem. Take an example of poetry. Let's take an example of bhakti. Now, what does it suggest? What does it involve? What kind of act it is? What kind of an activity it is? I'll give examples. Innumerable variations of bhakti. Textual, visual, lyrical, dancing, architectural. Let's take an example of vows. They are as much as poets as dancers, and of course they are as much poets as singers and instrumentalists, and with a dress code visually defined, and a kind of sense of architecture of the body. Just think of a bowl singer at the door, in the street, under the trees. And this would be true of the Abhang singing by the Varkaris, Pandharpur. Think of it, a performance of the whole community. Just watch the dress code, watch the singing, remember the ways by which they know all the 4,000 Abhangs almost by heart. It's going on. And same is true of Kabir. Of course, not identically, naturally. Each region, each language, each art form creates its own intertextuality of talking to other arts. And it's a matter of working out the details, how to do that. In one way or the other, this would be true of large number of inherited traditional practices of different arts. And then the disruption. Not to be avoided, not to be turned away from, but to be faced courageously. That's what our predicament at this moment is. That is not ours, but my predicament to start with. We have examples of this in our times also. Someone like Tagore, for example. Not because he practiced different arts, but because in him he embodied or imbibed ways of talking to different arts, not practicing different arts, which is another story. That's we have enough examples of those who do more than one thing. Forget Leonardo da Vinci and all those idea of geniuses, but in a normal way. A child does that. He draws, he paints, he composes a lyric, and then he stands on his head and he does yoga. And we could turn back to being children and do that, no problem. And then we would be not needing a desire to converse with other arts. Little Bible here, unless you become like children, you shall not inherit the kingdom of heaven. In that sense, playing with that idea. But, of course, I'm missing cinema here. Not because cinema seems to be, there is a guy called Jim Morrison, The Doors, maybe few of you would know of that, who at the age of 21 wrote that cinema does not need painting, literature, poetry, theatre in order to be cinema. It needs folk traditions. That's what he said. And it needs mythos and not logos. That is to say, not the written word, not the inscribed word, but the mythical word. That is to say, one which is shared by the universal memory of mankind. One might say that. But now that cinema is absent, let's keep it aside for a little while and get back to it ultimately. That cinema in all its contemporary variations, ranging from silent cinema in early 20th century, the word silent cinema talking to all other arts, to the most recent developments of digital ways by which we define ourselves. All that seems to converge in a manner that, takes care of these issues. But actually it doesn't. Why? And that's the last point. In the sense, I'm positively not here to take care of anything. I'm here to share the agonizing and quite entangling issue of being human at a time when I don't know any other way except to reach out everywhere. Take an example. Most of the examples that Ashokji gave, I mean, some of the examples that he gave, few of the examples, so it doesn't become TV-like debate, but Goswami goes on at that. You didn't say it, in fact. Has to do with avant-garde practices, adventurous, risk-taking practices, being alone, hopelessly alone. Kumar Sahani, take an example. He takes Alaknanda into what he does. He takes Akbar Padamsi into what he does. What is Akbar Padamsi? And what is Alaknanda? And what is Kumar Sahani? A name for very, very few individuals of our times. No problem. These are the individuals who have reached out. It's Allen Ginsberg from US who reaches out to Hare Ram, and goes around with his harmonium singing Padore Popat Raja Ramana. That's the poem he sings in MoMA, Museum of Modern Art, when he goes to recite his poem on a harmonium. And we are caught up in this imaginary but very adorable landscapes of all the cultures of the world, and therefore for us being confused about being in different realms of art practices is the only way that we know. And in that sense we are talking. We're talking all the time. We are conversing. We are transgressing. We are crossing boundaries. But it so happens that these are individual journeys and not the journeys of the communities. And it is here that someone like, and again I'll show off a little, an essay by Walter Benjamin called The Storyteller, where he makes a distinction between what comes from community goes back into the community. What comes from an individual goes nowhere. That is to say, now think about it. A Kathakar, what a good life. I mean, there are 10,000 people there, 6,000 of women are getting up and dancing when he is doing Ram, Sita or whatever. He himself goes into singing mode, and that too in different singing mode. While telling his katha, take Murari Bapu, take anybody, and you'll find that. And they have a hold on the public imagination, on the political imagination. And they are telling stories received from communities. There is a circle of hermeneutics. Everybody is in it. Everybody. You may look at it enviously, but if you look at it as a citizen, a contemporary individual, you don't know where you place yourself. You don't know where you place yourself with Tukaram, with Kabir, with any of those inherited traditions. We are disinherited children talking all the time, restlessly and anxiously. That's the point. I'll take up from all.
Jatin Das.
I was born in Orissa in a princely state, which was 3/4 tribal and a very enlightened princely state called Mayurbhanj. And come from a middle class Indian family where my grandmother used to have a pandit used to come and do the chanting from the manuscript, from the scriptures. And I was playing in the garden where I used to draw and make clay toys and water the plants, just to look after the plant. And my elder sister, brother, etc., they used to draw, they used to write poetry. And the little radio that you had, my sister would tune to classical music. In the evening that you quickly go and wash your feet and sit down to Prarthana. And at a Lakshmi Puja, the small figurines in bronze will come out and they'll be cleaned in turmeric and tamarind. And likewise innumerable festivals, or my grandmother would put the dhoti and the chadar gilkara. There's a particular seed that you squeeze the end of the dhoti, and they would be on the alna. Then all of us went bare feet to the Jagannath temple, which was 2 minutes from the home. So various things that happened in your childhood, it must have happened to innumerable people who come from a traditional background, which is also quite urban in the sense the Raja Mayurbhanj was the chairman of the Utkal Sammelani who founded modern Orissa. He founded the university, the medical college, etc., etc. And there was a printed color magazine. Here Mrs. Venkat Raman is sitting here. Her husband was the district collector when I was in school. And they speak Oriya still, and a lot of Oriyas who come from Orissa for 6 months, they say they forget their language. One is very lucky if you have grown up with mountains and river and ponds and fish and rice and various festivals, that you take it for granted, and it's a part of your day-to-day living and upbringing. So that was very special that I feel now. And quite often when you talk to people, where do they come from, they name cities, they're quite shy of talking about little towns and little villages, especially with a natural background, natural ambience. And quite often when people ask, when did you decide to be an artist? I say, I never decided to be an artist, to take up a profession as artist. You painted and drawn, and you went to an art school, and then you continued for whatever reason, but not to take it as a career, not as a profession, the way people talk about it. Then I went from this little town, which had painters, dancers, musicians, Sanjukta Panigrahi, Jivan Pani, all these people came from this little town. Very enlightened. There were chow dance, innumerable activities which is a part of the jatra, that you spend nights together listening to poetry and enacted, like the Kathakar, as PRABODH was talking about. Now PRABODH and I go back a long way, 50 years of knowing each other, in Bombay. So I go at 17 to Bombay, when Bombay was a fantastic homogeneous city with innumerable people who are not working for name or money. People like Sukhdev was a great documentary filmmaker, and Chari and others. And I had a little studio in Bhulabhai Memorial Institute, which no longer exists. Bhulabhai Institute, where Ravi Shankar started before going to America, the Kinara School. Iyengar, the great, it's almost like name dropping. Iyengar started his yoga class. Bal Chawra, who recently died, had a gallery called Gallery 59. And Ravi Shankar, Gaitonde, Hussain came later. Then Dashrath Patel, who from painting background went to build up National Institute of Design. And Chandra Lekha, Dashrath and Menon, who three of them worked together, and fantastic dance and lighting, and it's the whole aesthetics of visual and movement took place with Chandra at another place, at another time. But innumerable writers, poet, painter, musician, architects, and I would have somebody patting for my back, and I turn around and say, Dr. Baba. And Dr. Baba says, I like your drawings, would you consider coming to my studio to have over a glass of sherry? I didn't know what was sherry. And used to paint every day in the Tata Institute, and he would draw. Or my friend far away in Bangalore, Radhakrishnan, the scientist, who had a fantastic collection of painting, who was interested in music and cooking and gardening and so on. So there were people, whether in my hometown or later in Bombay, a kind of a holistic upbringing. I had a guru in my hometown when I was 10, 11 years old, was the headmaster of a primary school, who taught us yoga, who did painting and clay modeling, who wrote poetry, somebody called Biranji Narayan Mohanty, and was an extraordinary person of his kind. I have not met anybody till today. And then Bhulabhai Institute in Bombay, where Shirish Patel, the engineer, builds the Kemp's Corner. Dr. Bhava gets a 800-year-old tree, gets it transplanted to Atomic Energy Institute, and so on. And Meena Chitnis and Rajesh Khanna is Jatin Khanna, and Harihar Chariwala is to act in plays and Alkazis, and Meena Chitnis and Satyadev Dubey in Bhulabhai Institute. I know this character called Sunil Kothari, who was dating Sonal Mansingh in those days. Yeah, and they were very good friends. Yeah. So, you know, it was frankly fantastic time. Yamini's, Sonal's, first performance in Bombay at the Bhulava Institute, you know, and so on. And our friend, what's the Parsi, the filmmaker who died in America? No, the Parsi, the very famous one who did Merchant, Ismail Merchant started, and many people. Asha Putri will come, Gift Patel and me and Arun Kaladkar will go to the Marine Drive, and Asha Putri will impromptu sing for 2 hours. So people like that, people of that period, was extraordinary. It's reminiscing. It's very nostalgic, and some of my friends say, now don't think of that time, its times have changed. So from fish and rice to fish and chips at the Wayside Inn next to Jahangir, or Bhulava Institute, which doesn't exist anymore. And then people write books on progressive group. I think Ashok was talking about IPTA and all that, from progressive writers. The same term was taken up by Sousa and others. Sousa was thrown out of art college. And at that time, all over the country, whether in Lahore or Bombay or Calcutta or Madras, artists used to put do paisa together to have a little group so that they can print a card to hold an exhibition. So the progressive group frankly did not exist at all, that Sousa told me. He said he came out and he wrote the manifesto, and Raza and Hussain, they were in it. They didn't even hold an exhibition, whereas Bhulava Institute, a lot of people of today, those who are in the art world, in art history and curator, have no idea of the Bhulava Institute. That was a holistic center where there was a dialogue between writers, poets. Ravi Shankar will come and sit in the garden and say, Rabu, that to Bajan, please play a little bit. Hussain had his show in the lawn, you know, the painting of Zameen and all that. And all the dance teachers and etc. I mean, I took a photograph of Harihar Jariwala and Rajesh Khanna for their audition and things like that. Marshall's first performance in India for the Bhulava Institute people and things like that. And we had one little room of 8 feet by 6 feet. Hussain had one of them, I had one of them. I was the youngest of them all. Walked to the balcony to look at a painting, and you had to pay 1 rupee rent per day. The days you didn't come, you didn't pay. So this kind of holistic, one was very lucky when you look back, whether your hometown or in Bombay at that period, and I think at that period all over the world was also very homogeneous and very holistic. You know, when I came then to Delhi in 68, Nizamuddin was a ghetto like this. Nizamuddin East, West and Jangpura, where more than 100 writers, poet, painter, musician, architects, designers lived. And you name anybody in the art world, they lived there. And we met each other. Sorry. Sorry. No, Gaitonde will drop in and look at the work. He said, oh, I like this drawing, this color is very raw. And we met each other. Today, last 15 years or so and more, artists have not visited each other's studio. Forget about communicating or establishing a dialogue with other arts. And I remember a fantastic evening when Taib says, you know, Jatin, Gaitonde was my teacher for a while in JJ. And then Gaitonde didn't speak much, but he would giggle and then said, I didn't teach him drawing, not only then, I can teach him drawing even now. You know, both are gone. So one was home and then Bhulava Institute. In JJ School of Art, for instance, a paradigm that was created by the British Raj during the colonial period, 170-year-old art college, the first one in the country, where there was a concept of visual art that handicraft, craft, printmaking, sculpture, painting, architecture, applied art, all at teachers' rate, all within that same campus of JJ School of Art. And the government and the country didn't take that paradigm. There are architecture colleges, somewhere art, somewhere else, dance, somewhere else. And J. Krishnamurthy used to come in the evening and have his discourses in the garden of in the lawns of Jesus School of Art. So it is one of the most beautifully designed art school in the world, which has 40 feet sky light and barometric flooring and fantastic training, academic training, and everything else that happened elsewhere in Madras and Calcutta and elsewhere thereafter. They didn't even take that holistic art, visual art teaching in that approach. Now, as I said, then when we came to Delhi, in Nizamuddin, everybody met and shared with the Nagar brothers or Asad Ali Khan, and we would even send little piece of paper with a child folded, can you lend me 50 rupees, and things like that, between all the stalwarts in Nizamuddin, East Western Janpura. And I remember, G.R. Santosh, Ghulam Rasul Santosh, is an artist from Kashmir who lived in Janpura, a dear friend of ours, and many of them, there's a sea change, all of them, 90% of them gone, but it's like yesterday. Richard Bartholomew, you've gone to the market in Bhogal and you're coming back, Richard will say, oh, try some of these, I've cooked, just, and then in between say, I've just printed this photograph, it's still wet, would you like to have a look? And things like that. Or Raghu is to work in Statesman in those days, and I say, come immediately, I need a photograph of my painting to be taken and somebody wants it, and he will rush. So that period is gone. If I met these friends 5 times a week, we don't even meet once in 5 months. So PRABODH created a very interesting premise for a discussion. I've deviated from that, talking about personal journey, and say our poetry group. We had Ashok was talking of the poetry group, and one wrote all along for 50 years and didn't publish much. So if you do not hold an exhibition, quite often people ask, are you still painting? Now I said, ghas kaat raha hu. Because if you are not exhibiting, some kind of an idea has come into play that if you are not exhibiting, that means you are not painting, if you are not publishing. And PRABODH and I and Arun Kolarkar, Dilip Chitre, and all of us had a group with no outsiders. Our Parthasarathi, Geet Patel, Adil Jasawala, we used to meet on Sundays, and our Parthasarathi will get them duplicated, and between us, then one person will read, and we discuss threadbare. And they became some of the... but when somebody has done English literature today, masters or PhD, if you mention about Dilip Chitre or even Tom Morris, they have not even heard the name. When Gaitonde died, Akbar Padamsi's photograph appeared in Times of India and said he was a lithographer. India Today published, when Gaitonde died, that his price was this, and after death the price will be such. When Richard Bartholomew wrote reviews in Times of India, if we held the exhibition today, the review appeared next morning without delay, and not even a word will change. And he got 30 rupees a review only. He, Krishnan, and innumerable, and people all over in Calcutta, Bombay, Delhi, everywhere, there were people who were very sensitive, very committed. There was a camaraderie, there was sharing, and there was nothing like a poet or a writer or a painter or a musician. And I remember I've gone to, I had a show in 65 in Calcutta at the Gallery Kimol, and Satyajit Ray will pick up some newspaper which had the review, come to the gallery to give you the reviews. And once later when I visited, and he said, oh, I have done a film on my Master Mashai, that is Vinod Bihari Mukherjee. Come and see. And put his hand around you and say, what do you think? Oh, bring your friends. And then you took them, and then he would ask all of them. So times were different. And time today is very dangerous. And not only that, people between their families now talking to each other. One is not talking to oneself. One is too caught up for survival if you live in an urban setting. And then is far drawn that one question of talking to other arts, even in exhibitions. One lady said in an exhibition, "What do you do?" I am setting up an art center in Bhubaneswar, and under the auspices I have something called a National Documentary Film Festival on Art. And for the last 7 years we are doing it. Adur Gopal Krishnan's film was showing, and he's standing outside the door, and a journalist asking him, "What do you do?" And the film was showing. He said, "I've just come here as a friend of Jatin." Because he was so, and a journalist. So, whether Times of India printing Gaitonde's, instead of Gaitonde Akbar Padamsis, or there are no reviews, there's no look at media, there is no dialogue between artists, and a question of having a dialogue with, when Al-Qazi was at the NSD, I taught art there. And innumerable of these, I mean, this gentleman here, they were all students there, and they were, fantastic dialogue. Karant was there, so it set up, I did a poster design for theatre for them, and he had set up basement mein tha na, poster gallery shuru kiya. We have, I don't know, you see, if you talk to Sabyasachi Bhattacharya, the great historian, so I said, "Baba, have you written a book on cultural history of India?" So he said, "My God," next time he comes, I said, "Write a book for school children." He said, "You've given me a task, it's quite dangerous, quite difficult." Everybody read the economic and political history of the country, So it's the colonial hotspot, and we are little islands, nobody talking to each other, and it's very sad. Thank you.
Impression. And that's the rhythm of the discussion. Anyway, Prerana Shrimali.
बात करूंगी। जैसा प्रबोध जी ने कहा कि कलाकार बात नहीं कर रहा है या कलाएं बात नहीं कर रही, मुझे लगता है कलाएं तो बात करती हैं आपस में, और वो करती थी और कर रही हैं, अभी भी करती हैं। अलबत्ता कलाकार नहीं मिलते हैं एक दूसरे से। कलाकार अपने में इतने केंद्रित हैं, आत्म केंद्रित हैं कि हम अपनी विधा में ही नहीं मिलते हैं, दूसरी विधा की तो बात ही अलग है। तो ये एक डिलेमा है जिसको हमें देखना चाहिए, पर कलाएं हमेशा से साथ थी और अभी भी बात करती हैं, चाहे अनचाहे, जाने अनजाने, हमारे सोचने से या हमारे नहीं सोचने से, पर कलाएं बात करती हैं। क्योंकि जितनी हमारी सांस्कृतिक परंपरा है वो सब वाक परंपरा, ओरल ट्रेडिशंस हैं। ओरल ट्रेडिशंस हैं तो मेमोरी पे डिपेंड करता है, याद पे डिपेंड करता है, हमारी स्मृति पे डिपेंड करता है, और स्मृति अकेली आती ही नहीं कभी, हमेशा कलाओं को साथ में लेकर आती है, और कई छायाएं एक साथ आती हैं, कोई एक चीज नहीं हो सकती, इसलिए कोई कला अकेली नहीं हो सकती है, उसके साथ दूसरी छायाएं दिखाई देने लगती हैं। जरूरी नहीं है कि उसी वक्त एकदम नजर आए, पर होती जरूर है। बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग एक बात मैं जब इस सब्जेक्ट पे सोच रही थी कि जब हम किसी कला की प्रशंसा करते हैं या किसी की तारीफ करते हैं तो हम हमेशा किसी दूसरी कला के माध्यम से करते हैं। अभी इसके कुछ उदाहरण मेरे को याद आए तो मैंने जैसे डांस के लिए कहते हैं कि कितना खूबसूरत अंग है कि बिल्कुल शिल्पवत नाच रही हैं, स्कल्पचरस्क पोजेस, और पोएट्री इन मोशन, या हम ये कह देंगे कि कैसी अच्छी छवि उकेरी है। अगर गाने की बात है तो हम कहते हैं कि ऐसा गाया है जैसे राग से एक चित्र खींच गया, या एक पिक्चर सा राग का एक बिल्कुल सामने नजर आने लग गया, या he or she is dancing through her voice or his voice। चित्र की बात करते हैं तो हम कहते हैं कि look, the colors, there is a rhythm in the colors, they are talking to each other। हम उस रिदम की बात करते हैं और कलर के साथ बात करते हैं। शिल्प में हम कहते हैं कि मूर्ति कितनी लयात्मक है, इस शिल्प में संगीत सुनाई देता है। सो दे कांट बी अलोन, वो अलग है ही नहीं। मुझे लगता है कि उनको, फिर एक कविता की बात आती है तो मुझे लगता है कविता एक ऐसा मेटाफर भी है और एक ऐसी उपमा भी है कि जिसे आप कहीं भी फिट कर देते हैं। और किसी भी कला का जब आप चरमोत्कर्ष देखते हैं या उसकी उत्कृष्टता देखते हैं तो हम उसे पोएटिक कहने लगते हैं। व्हाट अ पोएटिक रेंडिशन, कैसी काव्यात्मक झलक नजर आती है। तो यहाँ पे कविता एक मेटाफर बन जाती है और हम उस किसी भी दूसरी कला की तारीफ में अल्टीमेटली हम ऐसी बात कहने लगते हैं। तो इसलिए मुझे लगता है कि कलाएं साथ साथ हैं ही, कलाकारों को इस पे ध्यान देने की ज़रूरत है। शायद कभी तो ये बिना जाने एक संवाद बनता है, पर जब कभी सीधा संवाद बनता है और वो डेलिबरेट है और उसको एक इच्छा से हम बनाते हैं, जैसे मेरा अपना एक्सपीरियंस रहा कि मुझे रजा साहब की पेंटिंग के साथ और अशोक जी की कविता के साथ काम करने का मौका हुआ, टीचिंग फॉर ईच अदर के लिए। तो मैं ये बिल्कुल विश्वास से कह सकती हूँ कि उसमें जितने मूवमेंट्स मैं बना पाई, अगर वो रजा साहब की पेंटिंग से, उनके चित्रों से मेरा नृत्य संवाद नहीं करता तो नहीं हो पाता, क्योंकि वो लाइंस की मुझे ज़रूरत ही नहीं पड़ती। शायद जो लाइंस मुझे नज़र आ रही थी वहाँ, जिनसे मैंने मूवमेंट बनाया, वो मुझे नज़र ही नहीं आता अगर वो मैं सीधा उससे संवाद नहीं करती या मेरा नृत्य उससे संवाद नहीं करता। और ऐसे ही कविता एक उसमें एक हम लोगों की एक पोजीशन थी जिसमें कविता और नृत्य साथ साथ चल रहा था। तो कविता में जो बात कही जा रही थी वो नृत्य में थोड़ी देर बाद आ रही थी, या नृत्य में पहले एक छवि आ गई तो वो कविता में बाद में आ रही थी। ऑफ कोर्स वेल रिहर्स्ड था थोड़ा सा पहले से, पर ऐसा एक कोशिश उसमें थी। और कॉन्सेप्ट था कि क्या कलाएं एक साथ चल सकती हैं एक दूसरे को बिना डिस्टर्ब किए हुए, पर क्या कोई नई बात बन सकती है? क्या हम एक समान पटरी के हिसाब से चल सकते हैं और फिर कोई बात पैदा हो सकती है? और उसी कोशिश को हमने किया। 95 में किया था ये एवेन्यू में, और उसके बाद यहाँ पे भी किया उसको। ऐसे ही दूसरा एक मौका मुझे मिला जब मुझे कबीर पे काम करना था, और इतना मैंने सुन लिया था कि कबीर पे तो नृत्य हो ही नहीं सकता। खासतौर से अशोक जी बहुत कहते हैं कि कबीर पे तो डांस संभव ही नहीं है।
कुमार गंधर्व कहते थे कबीर को घुंघरू नहीं।
हाँ, वही मैं कह रही हूँ। सो वो कबीर पे नृत्य अब कैसे किया जाए, तो मुझे लगा कि कबीर के अक्षरों को ही से कुछ निकाला जाए। तो मैंने क से काया, ब से बिरह और र से रंग निकाला, क्योंकि उनकी कविता में ये 3 रंग बहुत मिलते हैं, और उनको लेके काम किया। उसमें मुझे एक जगह ज़रूरत पड़ी कि मैं कबीर, क्योंकि जुलाहे थे, तो एक करघा कैसे दिखा सकती हूँ मैं। तो अब कथक में करघा दिखाना कोई बहुत ही लकड़ी जैसी चीज़ है, उसे कैसे इतना दिखा दिया जाए। तो मैंने उसमें एक मूवमेंट मेरा बना। तो मुझे लगता है तत्कार, जो फुटवर्क हम कहते हैं, तत्कार, हस्तक और लय से मिलके एक ऐसा जीवंत मुद्रा, एक मूवमेंट बन गया कि जिसे मैं दिखा पाई। कई बार ऐसा भी होता है कि आप कुछ देखते हैं और वो आपके दिमाग में रह जाता है। मैं एक पद्माकर की एक कविता पे कुछ काम कर रही थी और मुझे कुछ जेस्चर सूझा, और मैंने ऐसे लेकर, और नायक शीशे में दिख रहा है और मैंने ऐसे पीछे देख लिया। मुझे बहुत बाद में ये याद आया कि मैंने कई साल पहले नेशनल म्यूजियम में मिनिएचर्स की एक पेंटिंग देखी थी, और ये बड़ा फेमस मिनिएचर है कि जिसमें नायिका बैठी हुई है और शीशे में नायक की छवि दिख रही है जो पीछे है। और वो मैंने सोचा नहीं था, पर वो आ गया उस तरह। और वो, क्योंकि वो मेमोरी काम करती है, ये मेमोरी बैंक्स हैं जो आर्ट्स हमारे पास हैं, ऐसा मुझे लगता है कि वो मेमोरी जब काम करती है, कौन सी चीज़ कब सामने आ जाएगी मालूम नहीं पड़ता। क्योंकि ये मैं पढ़ भी रही थी अभी, तो मुझे लगा कि ये सारे आर्ट, क्योंकि ये एक ही थे, ये डिवीजन जितना बना है, ये डिवीजन बिल्कुल मॉडर्न है, कि जिसमें हम शिल्प, वास्तु, संगीत, नृत्य, काव्य, नाट्य सबको अलग कहते हैं। पहले ये सब एक था, और इस सबको इसीलिए नाट्यशास्त्र ने उसकी बात कही भी है। जब किसी भी कला को समर्पित कोई एक शास्त्र को हम ढूंढते हैं तो वो नहीं मिलता, कि जो सिर्फ एक कला के लिए समर्पित हो। और अगर ऐसा नहीं है तो फिर बात ये बनती है कि शास्त्र हमेशा किसी कला का प्रिंसिपल या सिद्धांत बताता है। वो पहला स्टेप है कि वो उसके सिद्धांत की या प्रिंसिपल की बात करता है, उसके एप्लीकेशन की बात नहीं करता। और सेकंड स्टेप आता है जब वो ये कहता है कि किन कलाओं के साहचर्य से ये सिद्धांत बना, या कौन सी कलाएं थी जिन्होंने इस सिद्धांत को बनाने में इसकी भूमिका अदा की। इसका मतलब वो शास्त्र भी यही कह रहा है कि ये सब मिलकर कोई एक बात बनी है। और मुझे इसकी पुष्टि मिली, वो एक कपिला जी की किताब है नाट्यशास्त्र पे उन्होंने काम जो लिखा है उसमें, और उसमें उन्होंने कहा, मैं कोट पढ़ रही हूँ, देयर इज एन इंटीग्रल विजन विच ब्लूम्स इन अ मल्टीप्लिसिटी. It is not an aggregation of disciplines, it is an interpenetration of disciplines. For facility we may call it a integral multidisciplinary approach. मतलब एक ऐसी दृष्टि है जो अंतर्निहित है, अंतर्भूत है, जुड़ा हुआ है, और जो खिलता है इसी में कि उसकी बहुलता हो जाए उसके आसपास। और शायद नाट्यशास्त्र ने इसीलिए तब समझाया हमें कि नाट्य जो है उसके अंदर नृत्य, संगीत, वास्तुशिल्प कैसे शामिल हैं, वरना शायद हमें ये पता नहीं होता या हम नहीं जान पाते। और जिस तरह ये कलाएं साथ में चल रही थी, एक और बात मुझे समझ में आती है कि सैद्धांतिक पक्ष को अगर हटा दें तो एक समाज ऐसा था जहां पर ये कलाएं संवाद कर रही थी। फिर जब समय वापस बदला और आज हम इस ऐसे वक्त में हैं जहां केवल मनोरंजन की बात हम करते हैं, हम केवल व्यावसायिक कलाओं की बात करते हैं, हम सिर्फ कमर्शियलिज्म की बात करते हैं। मैंने एक भी न्यूज़पेपर में, विजुअल मीडिया में कहीं ऐसा नहीं देखा कि क्लासिकल आर्ट में क्या हो रहा है या लिटरेचर में क्या हो रहा है। जो ईयरली राउंडअप्स आते हैं उसमें कहीं नहीं आता है कि क्या इन जगहों पे या इन कलाओं में कुछ विस्तार हो रहा है, क्या ऐसा संभव है, या आज किसने कोई नया राग बना दिया, या किन डांसर्स ने क्या काम कर लिया, उस पर हम बात ही नहीं करते। जो ये बात हो रही है कि पहले सारे बड़े कलाकार आपस में मिलकर बात करते थे, और यूरोप और अमेरिका के भी डांसर्स को अगर मार्था ग्राहम के बारे में पढ़ते हैं तो कितने बड़े बड़े लोगों ने उनके साथ काम किया, जो हिंदुस्तान में नहीं हो पाया। केवल चंद्रलेखा जी के साथ में एक ऐसा संयोग अच्छा रहा कि उन्हें ये सुविधा उपलब्ध हुई, बाकी नहीं हो पा रहा। तो ये मुद्दा कलाकारों का है, कलाओं का नहीं है। ये कलाकारों का मुद्दा है। और ये क्योंकि हिंदुस्तान में एक इंटरेस्टिंग बात मुझे ये भी लगती है कि जिन्हें परंपरा की समझ है और उसमें वो संयत हैं, उन्हें फिर समकालीनता की चिंता नहीं होती कि अगर आपके पास परंपरा है तो आपको समकालीनता की चिंता नहीं, क्योंकि वो तो चलता ही जाएगा, वो तो होता ही जाएगा, वैसा वो तो कंटेम्प्रेरी होता ही जाएगा, उसमें कोई बड़ी बात नहीं है। तो इसलिए यहाँ की पारंपरिक कलाएं इतनी सुदृढ़ हैं और इतनी गहरी हैं कि उसमें समकालीनता की चिंता तो करने की जरूरत मुझे लगती नहीं है। मैं इस सवाल पे समाप्त करना चाहती हूँ कि शायद हमें ये सोचने की जरूरत है कि क्या हमारा समाज या हम लोग इतने असंवेदनशील हो गए हैं कि हम अब उस संवाद को नहीं सुन पा रहे हैं, और या हमने उसको अपने से मतलब एक इनकार कर दिया है हमने, क्योंकि कलाकार इतना एकांगी हो गया है, वो इतना आत्म केंद्रित हो गया है। और एक और बात भी है कि सुनते आते थे हम कि भी चल पड़िए आप, आपको रास्ता मिल जाएगा, जगह भी मिलेगी। अब कलाकार पहले गंतव्य सोचता है, वो टारगेट सोचता है कि वहां पहुंचना है, रास्ता क्या होना चाहिए। तो हम रास्तों पे चलते हुए कहीं पहुंच नहीं रहे, हम पहले पहुंच के को डिसाइड कर रहे हैं, उसके बाद हम रास्ता खोज रहे हैं। और शायद इस वजह से ये असंवेदनशीलता हमारे सामने खड़ी हो गई है। जैसा कि अभी जतिन जी ने कहा कि इस तरह से सारे कलाकार मिलते थे, बात करते थे, और वो बात शायद इसलिए नहीं हो पा रही। तो क्या हम लोग इतने असंवेदनशील हो गए हैं कि हम उस संवाद को नहीं सुन पा रहे हैं? धन्यवाद।
प्रबोध ने इतना जैसे जतिन ने कहा बड़ा सैड पिक्चर तो खड़ा कर दिया, फ्रेगमेंटेशन वगैरह। हम सब लोग जो इस अवस्था पर हैं या जिस भूमिका पर पता तो लगता है, वी ऑल अंडरस्टैंड वी आर इन अ वेरी डिफिकल्ट टाइम. Also, it is also possible to go through one's narrative to tell you how you grew up and how you looked at the art forms and whether you feel that art forms talk to each other or not. As is Ashok Vajpayee's want and style, that he wanted to provoke us and then say okay, whether the arts meet or artists meet. In my case, he might have thought that Sunil is a dance critic, whether dancers meet or not. Well, dancers do meet or do not meet, as PRERANA ji already said. But these are the areas which have always bothered of late to many of people because they don't meet. My friend Jatin Das is my next door neighbor, and if we were to ask each other how times we meet, I am Richa, I go to his house daily to get water. तो मैं बोलता हूँ तेरे घर में पानी लेने आता हूँ तो मुझे मिलेगा तो बोला मैं तो कल सुबह जा रहा हूँ अहमदाबाद, तो मेरे तो अहमदाबाद जा शाम को मिलेंगे हम यहाँ, तो मिलना नहीं होता है, वो सही बात है. बचपन में when I was very young, I had gone to Srinathwara with my mother, and that was many years ago. And she, being a pious lady, asked that if you learn Sanskrit, Yamunashtakam, I'll give you 1 paisa. She was bribing me. Being a Banya, born in a large Banya family, I had no claim in our family. Nobody was a musician, nobody was a dancer, nobody was a great scholar, writer, etc. She taught me Yamunashtakam, and as is wont of the 10 children, the 10th child in the family. So, of course, we were indulged a lot. And I learned Sanskrit. Thank God I learned Sanskrit, and I can, without any hesitation, still say Namami Yamunamham Sakala Siddhi Hetu Muda Murari Pada Pankaja Sprata Mandarenut Katam. तब 1 पैसा मिला. मानी कहा कि तू कितना सीखेगा, तो मैंने कहा 8 सीखना है तो बहुत पैसा मिलेगा. बोल कि तो बनिया का लड़का है ना, he only thinks of the money. Because in the family there was an art and implied to make money. It was not that art what we call. However, it gave me a great insight into the Sanskrit language. I began to enjoy it immensely, and the images began to come to me. Everybody who has gone to Gita Govind, you understand Antarpras, you understand Chand, Lay, you understand the beauty of the form, the sensuous quality, etc. Lalita Lavanga Latapari Shilana Komala Malaya Samire, Komala and Malaya, Komala Mala Malaya, La La La, alliteration, etc. It entered into a new world of fascination. Images began to come to me, and I would wonder, because I was staying at that time in Srinathwara with my mother, going to the temple and seeing in the time of Shravan month Hindola, where Lord is seated on the swing, and the songs of Surdas would come. Sen Kamu ki Julayo Sura Shravan Ayo, it's the month of Shravan. And how has month of Shravan come? It has come like with an army of the Kamadev. How Bhava ke Khamba Manohar Kachagana Gagan Suhayo. That the pillars were made of Hav and Bhav, and the whole scaffolding was golden. These images began to cascade, come one after another in my head, and I got into this new world that literature does speak so much. I was very fond of Brij literature also, but not only Brij literature, the poetry. As PRERANA said, that there are images which come together of the painting, they come together with the music, they come with the sound, the sensuous quality, etc. And I began to see that when Ma took me to Srinathwara temple, she showed me Sanji. She showed me beautiful paintings. And that brought so much of what they call sanskar in one's upbringing, that one began to enjoy poetry in a manner that if, as PRABODH said about Kafka or Mallarmé, as one was very fortunate at that time to meet Suresh Joshi, and one was together as we go down memory lane with Ghulam Mohammad Sheikh, Bhupen Kharkar, Vivan Sundaram, Nilima Sheikh, Geeta Kapur, and all the friends were getting together. There was some dialogue that one was able to listen to, and since at that time there was not much about dance that one talked about, and I began to write about it, and Mulk Uncle took me over. We began to go and watch dance performances. So after the show was over, question would come. Lucky we were that Chandralekha would put me on the mat and say, hey critic, I'll cut you into pieces. Start telling us what do you think of this dance form, or what did you enjoy. Now these were questions which began to bother us also, that why we would call that dance is not progressive, why it is stuck into some format, etc. and why Chandralekha wanted to break and do something else, etc. I believe that those dialogues were taking place. In a way, life went very beautifully. Even in the Bombay city, what he described very well about the Bhulabhai Memorial Institute, and he described the many friends who were there that one was spending time with them. That was the time when, lucky as one was, that even though I was trained to be a chartered accountant, which I didn't do later on, I didn't practice and family never forgave me. But however, I'm grateful that as O.P. Jain often says, O.P.G., that Mulkarajan told him, don't lie like a banya shopkeeper. He also told him, don't like a bloody chartered accountant. You have something in you, you try to bring it out and enjoy and share the joy. Writing about dance also began to pose problem. How do you express the joy of having seen previous night as an art experience in a manner which could bring that same joy to one who reads the poem or one who reads your article? Edward Denbin was a great dance critic in America, and he often used to say that if you know poetry, possibly through poetry you can experience or explain your experience of previous night. Bhupen Thakkar, Ghulam Sheikh. Ghulam, of course, was a poet also and a painter, and many a time the images would be described each other. Or if the memory was there, if you remember the song, he would discuss about the song, and then also if you see his painting and try to correlate, many times it was not speaking to me. I would admit it very openly that I don't understand what you are doing now or what you are painting now. The dialogue between the art forms also was going in one's head. One was thinking that what is it these artists are doing? When I saw Chandralekha telling me about triangles in the body, triangles, they burst forth from my body. And what are these triangles? And in the triangle that she did in Sharira, talking of the yoni, which is a triangle, and the abstraction of the yoni, triangle upon triangle. She used to say such are not found abstractions in painting anywhere in any civilization. One was fortunate also to work with Ratan Thiam. And when I began to work with him, travel with him, I used to watch the way he would do the rehearsal. Each sequence was done with the lighting like a painting. Those who have seen Chakravyu, I remember the sequence. At the back, Arjun is talking to Subhadra, telling in her ears the secret of Chakravyu. In the front is a circle of Saptarathi who are playing the cholam, and then Abhimanyu as a fetus is listening to what father is saying to mother in her ears, and she falls asleep. Those are the images one can't forget. I don't forget many of the images which I see in Pina Bausch. I don't forget many of the images we have seen earlier as she referred to about Martha Graham. The dialogue of those people, and somebody spoke, it was PRABODH said about the Western, European, etc. Because these images came in the time that we lived, it was not possible that you will not see what Sousa was painting. You would not, when you go to Amsterdam, you won't see Rembrandt. All these images were coming, cascading in one's head, and there was always some confusion somewhere. Confusion was that because one had gone very deep into the parampara, one had gone very deep into Sanskrit literature, one had gone very deep into watching dance for so many years. When we hear a beautiful poem, Yaduvansha Sudha Moti Chandra, Swami Rara, Nari Jana Maharasa Chora, Mandaberu Samana Dhira, Kavijana Poshak Manda, these are fantastic samas which Yamini Krishnamurti will present them. Or we hear even one of the finest poem like Prahalika, Isakara na Kamini Hatha Jalu. These are romantic poems. Naika, Naiya Bala, Rasabhed na Jade, Sej Chadi Jia Mahi Dare, Kuch Baat Kahi, Bhaya Dhari, Chonk Padi, in a do Naki Chakachura Name, Katinagi Pitambar Chut Gayo, Jatakamini Deepak Dhak Liyo, is Kamini Karan Hatha Jalu. These were the Prahalikas. Then another one we saw recently, Suraj Chipe Adri Badri or Chandra Chipe Amavasai. Sun hides when the clouds cover it. Moon waxing goes away in the dark moonlight. Pani ko bund the patanga chip. The fireflies, they fly away, high away when it rains. And more chipe fagunai. The peacock goes away in the month of Fagun. Bhor bhaye more chipe, bhor bhaye chor chipe. It's morning, the thieves run away. लाख करो कितनों ही घूंघट के आड़ को गोरी के दो नैन छिपे न छिपाए. आप कहते हैं ना कि बहुत घटिया कविता होती है. ये घटिया कविता नहीं है, ये हमारी परंपरा में आर्काइव में रही है. जो आर्कियोलॉजी की बात करता है आपने मिस किया. हम अभी देखा, हम लोग अभी देखा था गीतांजलि, अभी डांस किया था. जो प्रबोध ने कहा था कि दिस आर्कियोलॉजी ऑफ टेक्स्ट sometimes these words stand in your mind and you start wondering that if so much is being संचित होता है हमारे मनों में, ये जो चारों ओर से भरमार हमारे मन में आती है, काव्य की आती है, पेंटिंग की आती है, उन्होंने कुमार साहनी की भी बात की, उस दिन आपके साथ ही बात हुई थी कुमार साहनी और अपने केलुचरण महापात्र की बातें, तो बड़ी बड़ी गुरुओं के साथ, बड़े बड़े नामों के साथ, बड़ी बड़ी इनकी दुखों की बात, मैं भी बहुत दफे कहता हूँ कि कुमार का तो बहुत बड़ा दुख होता होगा, अकेला एक आदमी है, क्या क्या करना चाहता है, तो ये समस्याएं कलाकारों की रही हैं। और आज के जो whatever the times we are living, as everybody has said, and we all understand the fragmentation of time, how times are fragmented, we are not whole, we are not harmonious. Who has got the time to see the sunrise morning? Who has got the time to see the moonlight or the star-studded sky? Often when I used to stay with Chandralekha and in the night we used to stay near the seashore, she would describe about the stars and they showed the Venus. She would show a number of stars and we didn't know the stars. And one wondered that this time of leisure, space, self-concentration is not there. We are totally, in a way, very disturbed. And when one thinks of the three academies together in the same building, not 100 feet away also, आप तो चैट में रह चुके हैं, ललित कला अकेडमी बगल में साहित्य अकेडमी, संगीत अकेडमी, कभी मिलते नहीं थे, आज भी नहीं मिल रहे हैं। ये बड़ी दुख की बात है कि इतनी बड़ी संस्था है in this city, in a capital city, like capital punishment, they don't meet each other. It's surprising that they don't miss each other. It's frightening also, a situation, very frightening situation it is there. Then one wonders that, as Prerana ji also said, which I often say, Leela ji is here, that the space in the media has gone so little. It is constrained. So where is the time to read something and reflect about it? Where is the dialogue? Maybe Ashok ji, maybe such forum would be one of the alternatives. We are not very sure, but this could be a dialogue. Often one wonders that if the media doesn't give you, and systematically it has killed the institution of criticism, where does one go? Possibly these are the small daira जो पहले लोग कहते थे, when I was in Calcutta, people say अड्डाबाजी करो, अड्डाबाजी करेंगे, बैठेंगे, बात करेंगे। वो अड्डाबाजी का आपने जो योग दिया, आपको बहुत धन्यवाद। नमस्कार।
शायद ना कहा था, मैंने हाँ समझ लिया। Anyway, तो अब हमारे रंगकर्मी यहाँ दो हैं, बड़े रंगकर्मी, तो उनमें से कम एक तो कुछ बोले और फिर Yeah, you want to come here? Sure, fine.
धन्यवाद अशोक जी। मुझे लगा कि ये डिस्कशन नहीं हुआ। Each went on his own journey, talked of what is in the arts. Perhaps we know what is in the arts. When we work in our own individual fields, we are negotiating painting, music, everything. I have been here almost 40 years in this city. I have seen city crumbling. But see, we don't have Bulawai school here now. Why? Because there is no vision of in any institution in Delhi. Let's take Delhi for example. You talked only about, you said about academy. As soon as it was a Rabindra Academy, Rabindra Bhavan. And if you look at it, what Rabindranath Tagore did, he was all in poet, painter, musician, everything. And what have they done to it? And these kind of forums, I think is the only crazy person I have seen him for many years who coins these, tries to chill something out and wants to do something. Now look at the institutions, private institutions, like Bulabai was a private institution. And we have here, they have become rented places. There's no intellect. It's like a hotel rooms. Here you hire a gallery or you hire an auditorium, pay your money and go. Now as the government has walked into this space, they move like a bureaucrats, they move like governments. They tell them, okay, you have 1 lakh per day, so okay, take 1 lakh per day. They have got the land for 100 rupees. I'm taking you away from this whole, I don't want to discuss arts, we know that. The point is the institutions that have come have collapsed because of money making, to be flatly. They are interested in how much booking. Whosoever comes, there is no choice between, they will not choose, no, I want this person, no. Therefore we have been pushed to the wall, literally to the wall. I mean, some of us have left city. Well, Jatin may be living here, but you are living in Orissa back. I am spending months in Kashmir because I think it may be possible there, but I don't think it is possible now there, because you say space, what is that space? You buy it. I mean, you go and buy that space. Third page, I always joke about who is this person? How many of these people are on this dress this time? I think it is a battle for the constituency of culture today, and none of cultural people are ready to fight it out. Otherwise, it will never have happened that academies today, the national academies are headless. They don't have secretaries. Nobody is asking them a question even. Same thing when you go to states. It is worse disaster there. They don't want you to be together. You know, I was making a film on Homi Baba. I have gone to his room. They opened it from me. It was a huge room like this, on the top floor of what was there in his room? He was an atomic nuclear scientist. Table as big as this and as wide, this much. That was where he will work. In this corner was a piano, and there was his painting area. And the story which was Mulraj Anand told me about Marg, how it came about. Homi Baba will come from JIFR to his house, which was near President Hotel, and they'd be talking, having tea together. When we come, and they pointed, we should have a magazine. And he told him, hold, I'll ask my uncle to put some money into it. And when you look at the numbers, there's a special number on 5th Symphony, which has been written by Homi Baba himself. So when you have to nurture these people, you have to, I mean, where do we meet? We have no spaces have been taken over, completely taken over. I mean, it looks very, little bit radical, or people say, right, politics. You have to fight it to get these spaces back. It is Salamat ki today, after 30 years of Indira Gandhi National Center for Arts, things are happening now there. Otherwise, we never knew what is happening. And there's one more problem, where you said about classical and the modern. I remember when I come to Delhi, I dare not enter Triveni Kala Sangam because it was such an elite place. Should I enter or not enter? Oh no, I think I am not. It's too polished. We have ourselves as artists also gone away from our community. We have left our communities. We think that community say lena hai, dena kuch nahi hai. That is, we don't give. We want to give in US. I would love to do a performance in Paris or New York, but would I do among communities? Delhi is not a community; it's a metropolis now. To go out and do, but there is no space even if you want to do. Where will you perform? There are no places. Now there is Delhi administration. They do Mohan Rakesh Festival for theatre. They do another festival, some Bhartendu Festival. Now what plays are you doing? मैं हमेशा कहता हूँ, who will make the seeds? We come as harvester, like those old landlords who used to go in the time of harvest, take over the entire crop and give a little crop to the serf or to the bin. And that is what has happened to culture. Look at the festivals, and you tell you are mad. Delhi is celebrating culture. What are you celebrating? Are we making young artists to come with us? Are we holding hand of each other? No. I think the problem is we need to ponder. It's not difficult to do it. I would say it's not really difficult to do it. We have no voice now. We need to get our voice back. Tell those people who have taken 1 rupee meter land at the prime places, 1 rupee a meter at Kamani, Sriram Center. Today, when they wanted this, I know the story of Sriram Center, for example, they were begging us to perform because nobody was coming there. When we started coming and performing there, it became their theatre, and we have been pushed out. Somebody else is performing there. So these are practical things. It doesn't happen. Like Jain Sahab kahan gaye? He is here. He has a great institution, Sanskrit institution. When do I go there? Aap kab gaye last? Why can't he start a dialogue there? They are high people. I think we have to push them that it's not a private property. It's not your home property. It's a public place. There are certain, you look at the bylaws, you'll find it. They have to do these things. They don't do it. And I think state also needs to do it. Things are apart. I mean, I felt very sad when you talked about Gulabai. I had a glimpse of it when I went to Bombay there. I was thinking, Where are you? Why? But we have to blame ourselves for another thing. When we become the officers, when we become the decision makers, we exactly do the same thing. That is the sad part. When we are shouting Zindabad Murdabad, and when I will take over the institution, I'll do exactly the reverse. And that is the tragedy. Because I think what has happened, every artist of all disciplines have become more self-centered, individualistic, great artists. They have to open their gates, they have to open their hearts and hold hands up each other. Then this dialogue is possible. Otherwise this dialogue may never happen. Thank you.
Open to questions and brief comments.
Ashoti, you already unfolded a thing, then you have to fight it out with us.
Of course. No, I'm going to tell you of my experience with data, but let others. I have some experience in this business.
Yeah, because
Yes.
I think when you spoke about what's happening to the world of culture, everything was made absolutely clear. This is what is happening, particularly amongst the dancers. There's a kind of a comfort level where everybody is looking for performing. Nobody wants to know anything about the art form. I don't think he's even interested. I was talking to Maharajji, Birju Maharaj, some time back, and he told me a very sad thing when I mentioned that he had hundreds of students spread all over. He said, "हाँ लीला जी, सब आइटम सीखना चाहते हैं, कोई कथक नहीं सीखना चाहता. Nobody wants to get into the samundar called कथक. वो क्या करेगा? He says, जिंदगी भर बस पछताए रहेगा. Where is he going? How will he put bread on the table? We have no way of making these people survive. They have to perform. And in order to perform, we'll teach them a few items. गुलदस्ते के जैसे इनको दे देंगे, बस उसी को जाके वो बार बार repeat करते रहेंगे. I remember when I was in the Kuchipudi village, I was talking to a very old guru from one of the traditional families who's unfortunately no more. He passed away a few months back. And he was talking about the Yakshagana tradition. And he said, you cannot have it today. I said, why not? He said, you know, the dialogue was all improvised. We were all people who are extremely well read. We not only spoke our own lines, which were improvised at that particular moment, but we also sang the songs and we danced. And that was the whole world. And how much do you think I received? I received 10 rupees for a performance. But I was looked after. I was sheltered. My family was not in want. But today, where do I go? Who is going to look after these huge troops? We have no way of surviving. So we have to go on to solo dancing, which is an entirely different world. So forget about this world of Yakshagana. And I think this whole star system and the kind of, we keep talking about our classical arts which have to do away with the ego. I think more than anything else, it's making the ego grow. There's only I in the end, there's nothing else. The art, it completely vanishes. So I think the entire picture has to change. It's all very well to talk about artists not talking to one another and art not speaking, across disciplines. But I think for that there are certain conditions which are necessary, and I don't think we have them at the moment. And unless we change our way of thinking and get away from this this crazy merry-go-round of just performing and nothing else, I don't think we will talk meaningfully across disciplines.
Anybody else?
Ashok, can I respond?
Yeah, please. Yes, of course. Take the mic there.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, situating yourself within a system and then feeling hopelessly defeated by it is one of the ways by which an individual takes a decision to be an artist. So, if I had the capacity to take risk, which everyone took, one of the things that I meaning and creative mind does, in his or her work, this particular alienation enters. We might want to wish it away by going back and returning to, quote unquote, all forms of very lively and brilliant traditions. But how is it that we don't accept the simple fact of our lives? Look at it. And accept not the fact, but the phenomena, or what I would say, there is a breakdown. Or it's exhausted. It's over with. The wonderful idea of grandmother telling a story to a grandchild is over with. Let's accept it. You stand on your own now. Almost. That humanity might recover a sense of community is another story, but where is it? That being an experience of contemporary mind, of course traditions are not hugely useful anymore. One respects to traditions, one bows down to it, one, is other. But it's not useful for the ways in which I experience life today. It is that leads to a new configuration of talking to other arts. I think a good example here, personally, is the example of some very avant-garde minds like Cunningham, Rauschenberg and John Cage. I remember a performance in New York where Cage and Cunningham were performing together, Cage being quote-unquote a musician and Cunningham being quote-unquote a dancer. And they were doing it together. It was not a jugalbandi. So when you asked, how do they? He said, because don't you see your ears and your eyes? Make both of them work. Now that's a very refreshing ways by which two arts are talking. We have a very funny picture of two arts talking. Hussain painting on Bhimsen singing. That's a travesty of what is meant by listening to each other. As somebody rightly, I suggest that listening to oneself and internalizing is one of the few openings for us, not institutions, but being on your own is one of the few genuine creative options open. A good example of this is a poet like Jivananand Das. I'm going back to, what is it? I'm not one among the many. My journey starts from there. Let it be. Let's see where it takes us. Let modernity in the true sense arrive in India and have a showdown with all forms of very brilliant traditions. Let's have it. It began in literature. Dance and music also can go through it. It's worthwhile. Paul Valery writes an essay called Pure Poetry, in which he celebrates the poetry as pure only when it moves away from music, but arrives at that height. And there he says, he gives an example. Music is enjoyable because there are no disruptions. If there is a concert going on, Parsis in the concert, and I don't know if you know NCP, I at Bombay, I grew up. No one will cough for that because there's a third movement, adagio, and everybody, and as soon as it stops, everybody. He says, music should be like that, not a sound in between. John Cage says, it's only that coughing which is music. Now this ability to shift the paradigm is the artistic journey. It's an adventure, it's a pleasure. Chandralekha is a joy because she is shifting the paradigms. Partly, I only know it from Sunil that she does that. I like the idea of geometries in my body. Just the very image can take you for another 10 years somewhere. Anyway. So being on one's own, no institutions.
PRABODH.
Just a thought, it's a polemic. Of course I need an institution, Raza Foundation. Sorry.
Everybody is on his own journey in any case.
Yeah.
Everybody is on journey. Some may fall apart, and some may move on and arrive somewhere. But talking to each other, you're talking of the collaborations then. When I could collaborate and create some idea and work on it. But when you talk of the arts together, talking and create, you're talking of things which will happen between me, you, quietly, and then Sunday will come. But what is important is when you talk of the Parsi community, for example, there's a community. They don't cough that time.
Yeah.
You're all the time coughing here.
But I suggested coughing is music. That's where, you become sensitive to that possibility. And then suddenly things open up. Anyway, just a thought.
Anybody else before I conclude? I want to narrate to you two experiences. One of institution making, which is Bharat Bhavan, as you know. I suffered from a notion that the arts were all together and they should be brought together under a single roof. So that's how Bharat Bhavan was born. Remember it. And we also try to redefine the notion of contemporaneity, saying that not only the so-called modern contemporary is contemporary or the urban contemporary is contemporary, there are other forms of creativity which are equally contemporary. So the classical is also contemporary and the tribal folk arts are also contemporary. We were the only institution. In Delhi, you have the National Gallery of Modern Art, which has not a single work of a folk and tribal artist. And you have the Crafts Museum, which by its very name is calling itself a museum. Something which is already dead and gone or almost going. Whereas in India, we have one of the largest crafts population. 1% of India does craft, which is absolutely unimaginable in any other part of the world. And yet, we have pushed them out of the notion of contemporaneity, out of the notion of creativity. It's all right to have them dance around the public
26
places,
January.
The second notion was, which I had observed from my earlier experience with Kala Parishad and the other things that we did, that if there is an audience which is not so segregated and fragmented as the artistic community itself is. So people would come to listen to classical music, to watch classical dance, to see modern theatre, to see modern painting, to react to complex, difficult poetry. And there was Bhopal is a small city, but there were about 200-300 people who will come for every of these things. And then when Bharat Bhavan came, many more people got tempted. They came to see the museum, they found that there's A.K. Ramanujan reading poetry, so they would be drawn there. They came to see, let's say, Chandralekha perform or Yamini Krishnamurti perform, and they would know, oh, there is this museum, so let's go and have a look at the paintings. So it was possible for many, I don't know what happens now, I left it 21 years ago, that there was possible to discover among the audience a comparatively less broken tradition of appreciation than among the artists themselves. This is one. The second is our experience of Raza Foundation camps. This is an exclusive camp in which there are musicians, there are dancers, there are painters, artists, and poets. And when it is started, the idea was not merely that they should come to know each other's work more deeply, more sensitively, which they have. So it's very interesting to see that a Bahauddin Dagar commenting on a painter or a dancer like PRERANA SHRIMALI commenting on something which is on poetry of Nilam Kumar, things like that. That has happened. Every time we say, we will like at least you to come together and do some collaborative project. I think we have had how many? 5 camps? 5 camps, and not a single project is done. Now, Of course, as Prabodh said, one should be in one's loathsome splendor. Hopefully one is talking to oneself, hopefully, although I suspect. All that. So it's not really the lack of institutional space alone, although that's a major problem, and I'll come to it in a minute. I think there is a reluctance to exceed the limits
Breakthrough.
of breakthrough. That's- So when he was saying that it's only the avant-garde, it's very strange that today we expect or we see only the avant-garde doing something what one time the classicists were doing almost naturally.
Spontaneous, yes.
So
Very
in a manner of speaking,
That's-
the so-called avant-gardism today in the arts is really a new classicism,
yeah.
because you are going back in that sense to that tradition. Anyway, third
Yeah,
point.
that's a good point.
I think the artistic community has become, while there are so self-centered individuals and self-concerned, hopefully self-addressed, etc., they don't seem to work out of simple self-interest. If these spaces are being taken away, I haven't seen anybody raising the voice. The Lalit Kala Academy has been without a chairman for more than a year. No artistic group raised or wrote a letter. Or, there is no secretary, as far as I know, in the Sangeet Natak Academy. And it is more than a year now, or nearly a year or more perhaps, and nobody. When I became the chairman, at my instance, the Ministry of Culture set up a coordination committee between the three chairmen, and the secretary, culture secretary, became the coordinator, not a member. We planned many things together. Not a single thing was ever done. Everyone came up with some problem or the other, because each one is doing these items, these programs, festivals, and the governments also are very happy because it's visible. You know, the sort of Khanani jaake, Khanani jaake, Fita kata, tasveer chad gayi, this, that, and the other. But why are we allowing as an artistic community? It is not a matter of politics. It's a matter of self-interest. These are your spaces. They must be reclaimed and brought back to how, I mean, we can, the foundation has a limitation. You know, we can only raise the issue. We are willing to fund a campaign if there be one. But beyond that, after all, the artistic community. You can't allow national academies which are using public money, which were set up with great noble ideas and by noble people who appear to be much more noble now than ever before, to just run aground. And you do not bother, because you are not bothered. If you are an artist, you are not bothered because you have made a life, a professional life. This can live without the support. So only the mediocres go to Lalit Kala and things of that kind.
Even national film exhibition from years now.
Yeah. I mean, the whole thing is collapsing, and we have allowed it to happen. Now there is some sense in what MK was saying, that the artistic community must come together. If we cannot talk to each other on other deeper philosophical, aesthetic issues, nor share our anxieties or cross the limit, at least these are purely, yes. If we don't need this institutional framework, then we must endeavor to abolish it, to demolish it, and to ask for a new kind of a institutional framework. If the academies have outlived their importance. You know, 50% of Lalit Kala's grant goes into fund paying 150 workers which are employed there. Now out of these 150, I came to know about 25. And I grant there will be another 25 needed to type and sweep and do things like that. We don't need 150, but we have them. And similarly, in other sort of academy, no better. Now, these are issues which ought to be raised. There was a time when and the committees have gone into it and have described all that and nothing happens. Now, in short, it's not enough that we don't talk. I mean, it's not enough that we don't talk to each other. It's also not enough that we don't even think together about issues which have nothing to do with what we are practicing and which does not impinge upon the art practice as such. Carry on your art practices in a self-addressed or self-exploratory manner as you like. But many arts, most arts need community spaces, institutional framework. And those cannot be. Now the argument that everything would be done by the market and the market will take care of it is a very dangerous proposition. In all over the world, and look at the most capitalist countries, there is a framework which is a public framework. It is publicly funded, whether in France or in the Royal Shakespeare Company, the Royal Ballet, the Bolshevik, etc., and the MoMA, etc., receive huge grants from public funds. Now, I don't see how you can allow the market to take over that, well, this is what is going to happen. So there is something, and if need be, or if it works, the Foundation can convene a national conference of artists and eminent people from various walks of life to raise their voice. Because otherwise, things will only deteriorate. Anyway, that's all. Thank you very much for being with us. The next one will be now in July. We are going to give you a two months holiday from Art Matters. Hopefully not from arts.